Welcome to Dawn of a Story. This is more than a podcast. It's a place where we speak the truth, tell the stories that shape us, and honor the moments that made us who we are. I created the space because I believe storytelling is how we connect, how we heal, and how we remember who we are. Some stories are still being written. Some are full of laughter. Some have changed everything, but all of them matter. Whether it's my story or one of my guests, my hope is that you hear something that resonates, that reminds you that you are not alone and encourages you to tell your story too. So settle in because every story starts somewhere, and this one starts now. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Dawn of a Story. I'm your host, Dawn Pascal. I'm so very grateful you decided to spend your time with me and my guest this week, Dana Barnes. Every show, we will be exploring a new theme, and this week's theme is The Weight and the Gift, a caregiver's story. Caregiving is one of those journeys that changes us from the inside out. It's heavy, it's sacred, it's exhausting, and it's filled with moments of profound love that often go unseen. Today's guest knows the duality of that path, the weight of the responsibility, and the unexpected gifts that come from showing up for someone you love. This conversation is for every caregiver who has ever felt stretched thin, deeply devoted, brave, overwhelmed, and transformed all at once. So let me tell you a little about my guest. Dana is a long form writer, both on the page and in audio format. Her work has appeared in Mayborn and Fallout magazines, the Boston Phoenix, and has been broadcasted on Public Radio International. She has been a caregiver to two family members and wrote a long narrative essay about her experience caring for her father in his final moments. So without further ado, let's get started. Dana, how are
Hi,
you? So
Dawn.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
I know it's been more than a hot minute since we've seen each other,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Dana and I met early 2000s.
2005, I think.
Okay. I first started the business, the sort of side business at the time, which then became my full-time bakery. And I met you at, was it a filming for like a little internet TV show? Is that how we met?
Someone from that show recommended
Yes.
that you
Right.
contact me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, it was great. It's great. So I'm happy that you're here and I'm happy that we're still connected. And I am very much looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
Every journey has a moment where everything shifts. So, what moment for you was when you realized that you were stepping into the role of a caregiver?
There were so many points. I'm going to think of my dad right now. I now have 3 caregiving experiences, which one is very recent. But with my dad, there were stages along the way. Like he needed help. He was in a rural community and he needed help. He needed like just research and, calling
Mm.
the pharmaceutical companies to see if you can get cheaper medications and stuff like that. He just ended up needing that kind of help. And then he moved when he had an electrical fire, he moved to live near me. And then he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And
Oh,
so I'm trying to think of how this happened. My husband and I were providing some things to him, going and checking on him regularly and talking to him regularly. But all of a sudden, we had tickets to see a comedian, and that night, and I was heading out to go to the show, and he said, "I need you to come move in with me now." I don't know how he worded it, but can you come now and not leave? So that was
wow.
it. And I moved in with him, and my mom and my husband both helped, and I worked part time because he couldn't at that point. He was still smoking, which was a big part of the essay, but he was still smoking, and he just didn't want to do treatment. So it was
Right,
just a matter of just going through the hospice process with him.
right, right.
And then with my mother-in-law, we knew we were caregivers to her because she was diagnosed with lung cancer. This was before my dad. Sorry to skip around, but this is before my
Wow.
dad. And we were in Georgia, and suddenly we just figured out that we could move because I was freelancing at the time. And my husband just left his job and we moved to Texas, which is where we're both from, to take care of her. So he moved in with her. And then I lived in a house that she owned, but she wasn't living in. So
Right.
um,
Wow.
that was a definite big shift.
Absolutely, positively a huge shift, and
Hmm.
you're dealing with so many different aspects at that time. You're
Hmm.
dealing with trying to manage your emotion and
Hmm.
the understanding that you know that this is potentially the final days for your, for your dad and for your mother-in-law. Also trying to deal with that grief, trying to still live your life and, trying to work and trying to deal with all of the other things going on. How did you start to, I don't want to say compartmentalize, because that's what I did in the journey that I had with both of my parents as well. But how did you deal? How did you deal with all of the aspects of it?
I shut down a lot of parts of my life in my personal life. I mean, I was still in touch with my friends and my friends were there for me, but I wasn't as engaged with them as I was
Right.
normally. And then
Right.
work, I went to part time. It did end up impacting my job when I came back, that I had been part time for a while. So I just focused on my dad, and I also focused on, and I talk about this in the essay, but it's just I really did think of myself in some ways as a project manager, like, which
Yeah.
I do have some experience with that, but I was just thinking, how can I manage his care so that he gets the best care and gets his goal of living his last days with dignity, dying with dignity, being surrounded by love? How do I give him that? So I really focused on that. It was kind of a laser focus, and I feel like there's some good and bad with that, because toward the end it was stressing him out a little bit how much I was doing. So he told me he wanted to be free with what he had left. And so I tried to
Right.
relax my you know all my
Right.
calls and my various things that I was doing to give him that peace. But it was really, really hard. And I was just constantly in reactionary
Right.
mode, just
Right.
constantly reacting, constantly going and doing and advocating for him and making a little, I'm trying to think of the word, nuisance of myself out there in the medical community,
Right.
because he needed advocacy.
Right. And I'm
And
so
yeah.
happy that you use that word. I'm so happy that you use that word because those are all the feels that I went through and my sister went through. We didn't know what we didn't know. And
Hmm.
if that at all if that statement makes sense, we
Right.
had not known anybody else that had gone through what we were going through in our family. And heaven forbid anybody would have a conversation or a plan about what they wanted to do because everybody thought, oh, everybody's going to be fine. My mom's not going to have two strokes. My father
Oh,
is not going to have a gallbladder infection and then have an undetected heart attack and then die 6 weeks later. Like
I'm so
nobody,
sorry.
you know what I mean? Thank you. And it's just, so I'm so happy that you used the word advocacy because what we found, the piece that sort of helped us get through all of this was knowing that we were there for them and standing up and being the best that we could to find out
Hmm.
the right course of action. I don't want to say the right answers because not everything was right. Some things were trial and error. Obviously, you have to go through the motions and see what works, what helps, what doesn't.
Hmm.
But being an advocate is so stinking important. And and just helping yourself find the right connections to get on the right path of whatever,
Right.
whatever that path needs to be.
And paying attention to everything,
Absolutely.
we just had a situation recently with my mom where when she had the discharge paperwork, I said, because I was racing from work, and there's a shift change at 7 at the hospital. And she wants me to make it clear they took really great care of her. So in telling this story, I still need to
Okay.
say they took really
Okay.
great care of her,
Okay. Okay.
because she'll have a thought afterward if I don't. Anyway, point is, the the cardiologist had told me that she needed medication. He told me that on the phone when I talked to him after a procedure she had. I looked at her discharge paperwork. So I'm flying from work just to get there as quickly as I can before
Right.
shift change. And the
Right.
nurse, it seems like, stayed later after his shift just to be able to do it. But anyway, we're going through the discharge paperwork and there's nothing with the cardiologist's name on it. And I'm like, this doesn't match. So anyway, it turns out they had to look it up in the notes and then they added the cardiologist medications. They made sure to call them in, but they weren't going to call them in if I hadn't asked. And that's amazing to me that people think it's all personal care, which is, I don't think there should be a stigma about that either. But there's just this, in general, people kind of minimize what caregiving is, but so much of it is paying attention and
Yeah.
being really active in the care and
Right.
just making sure that she had those heart medicines when she was checked out of
Right.
the, when she was
Right.
discharged from the hospital.
Right.
So,
So checking, number 1, double
mhm,
checking, and then having eyes in the back of your head and eyes on the side of your head and looking in every
yeah.
direction all the time.
Hmm.
It's so important that you are absolutely positively on top of that
Hmm.
to make sure
Hmm.
that, she's getting everything that she needs to be discharged with the correct, medication, etcetera.
Right. And it's still shocking to me. Have we checked in with all the 3 doctors that she was dealing with to make sure we have all the medications? So I feel like caregivers could go give panel discussions at medical facilities and say, these are some things to think about. We know
Absolutely.
more
Look,
than you do about some of this,
well,
believe it or
look, and
not.
it's right, and it's above and beyond, and
Hmm.
you've got to think you're hyper focused on that one person, and I understand that they might be dealing with, however many patients, etc.
Hmm.
But you're right. There does need to be a checklist. But kudos to you and your project management. That's excellent, and I totally get it because that's kind of the world that I came from too,
Hmm.
that you just make a list and you make sure, "Hey, she's supposed to
Hmm.
be getting this at this time and this at this time," and questioning is so
Hmm.
important. It's not being a nuisance. It's just making sure that you've dotted your I's and you crossed your T's.
Well, and I appreciate that you said it's not being a nuisance, but I would say I have been a nuisance, but not in that instance. But with my dad, I was kind of a gnat, you know. I mean, part of it was that he had so many different nurses. I just couldn't keep track. They weren't keeping track. It just felt like he wasn't getting the best care he could have. And so I feel like, but I do feel like I probably crossed the nuisance line a few times. But then I,
Who? Who's judging? Who's judging? Are you judging yourself by saying that? No, you were an advocate. Look at your father. You love him,
yeah,
right? You still
yeah,
love him. He's still with
hmm,
you,
yeah,
despite the fact that they're physically not here with us. And you did right by him. So you were his
yeah.
advocate. Kudos to you for being his advocate.
Well,
I don't want to make you. I know. I'm going to cry along with you.
thank you. It's really a very special time in my life, which is part of the gift part of this discussion is that I feel like with the moments I had with him were so special toward the end that we just really bonded in a different way than we ever had. Most of the time we were really close. But the time that we had was just it was just so focused on each other and on his life and everything he cared about. And
Right.
even and I hate that he smoked, but it was really really important to him. It was so important to him that I knew he wasn't going to quit, and that was one thing I helped him do until his almost his final days. I think it was like the week before that he stopped smoking, the week before
Wow.
he died. But also his friends and family and all of this, all the things that were really important to him, I made sure that and my mom and my husband also made sure that he had those social times as well. And my
Right.
mom was his first ex-wife, so it was kind of an amazing story that she moved back from Georgia to Texas around that time and just was part of my care team. She was
Wow.
there when I was at work and she would alternate with my husband and they would um you know just she just hung out with him and brought him food and all of his
Yeah.
favorite foods that she knew how to make. And it's just really, it was an amazing experience because she was from so far back in his life, but they
Right.
maintained that connection. So it was really
Well,
beautiful.
obviously that bond was there and that connection was there long before you being
Hmm.
born. That's a beautiful thing that she was present for him at that point in time and transition in his life because
Hmm.
that's really what it is. It's transitioning from the physical plane to the non-physical plane. I mean, I still feel my parents around me every day. I pray to them. They show up in dreams when things are happening or I feel stressed. I ask them for guidance and for clarity on anything to help me get through whatever it is that I'm going through, and I believe that they're always there. So that's beautiful that she was there with him at that time in his life. We talked a little bit about the weight. We talked a little bit about the gift, and that was really a beautiful segue earlier. Because that's where I wanted to start to ask you some questions. You mentioned earlier, and I can attest 150% that you lose yourself and you sacrifice yourself. So, how did caregiving challenge your sense of self, and what did you learn about who you are as you were going through this whole process?
I've always wanted to help people. If anyone was sick at all, like with anything minor, I would run in and get a little nurse's outfit that my mom bought at a church bazaar, and I would run in and put it on and tend to the sick because I wanted to be a
Aw.
nurse. Well, there were issues with the fact that I don't like blood and I'm not good at science. So,
Couple of
there were some
staples,
problems with
yeah.
this dream. But anyway, I was good at the bedside. I've just always kind of been a helper type. And so
Mhm.
with caregiving, it helped feed that part of myself, but also seeing how much it helped, how much it genuinely helped, and also trying not to overhelp. I guess it just reinforced the importance of being there and showing up for people and letting go of what my needs were at the time. Caregiving can be incredibly inconvenient for your life. Just even when my husband and I were figuring out, we had a discussion of could we move from Georgia to Texas? Now we don't have kids. That would be a big factor. If I
Right.
had had a steady job that wasn't freelancing and we don't have kids. But we discussed it for maybe about 3 or 4 minutes or something. And we said, let's go. So, I mean, it was incredible. I was in the middle of a project when I ended up moving. And so it was just very disruptive. But at the same time, we could do it and we did it. And seeing how he showed up was also really a beautiful thing. And like seeing how my husband also showed up for his mom and then now my mom again made me see all these connections with people that we can trying to figure out how to say it. It's just we can and should support each other as much as we possibly can. And
Right.
one of the things that happens too is sometimes people are difficult. So it's not all, you know, unicorns and,
Yeah,
it's not
rainbows
all
and
like,
sunshine. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, exactly. It's sometimes my dad would do difficult things and would get irritated and do things that didn't make logical sense,
Right.
that were stubborn, and my mother-in-law, she was like, I just love this expression, but one time she looked at me and said, Dana, I just have a case of the grumps, right? So that day she
Okay.
had a case of the grumps, but kind of a lot of times she had this grump case, but I loved her very much and, just wanted to be there for her. So she moved in with us in her last months. And then we were able to be there for her
Yeah.
in the same way. I mean, each situation is different, but
Right. We talked about being an advocate and finding that balance, and also dealing with the individual who's now going through this whole change. And there were times when, because my mother had suffered 2 strokes and then the onset of dementia, she became a different person. This really wasn't
hmm
her. My mother was never a cursor. As things sort of progressed and got worse, you had to sort of start to temper what you did and how I approached her. So if I know now that she doesn't really like to just have somebody touch her arm, that I need to ask her or tell her that I'm going to do that, so that doesn't bring on any kind of sudden screaming or cursing or anything else or startling, then
hmm
it made some of the little funky things that were happening throughout the day, or the grumpiness or whatever, a little bit easier to handle, because now I
hmm
knew, right? And then I wasn't going to get upset that she was screaming, cursing, and yelling, because I mitigated that whole situation. But, you learn that as you watch that individual go through the stages of what they're going through.
One thing I want to say about that is talking about dementia. I was in Berlin and I helped a family, just they would leave to go grocery shopping and the mom
Okay.
had dementia. And so I would look after her while they were shopping. One thing I found out, I think she told me because she was very focused on appearance and everything, and I wasn't wearing much makeup. I found out that she liked it better and was happier when I wore makeup. So boy, I started wearing makeup, you know? I'm
Wow.
like, why not? It's a little thing I can do to make her happier, you know?
Right. Right.
And like my dad was just watching all this nostalgia TV stuff. So we just sat there and watched nostalgia TV with him just the
Right.
whole time and
Right.
watching the same things over and over again. And it's just, you just do what makes them happy, what doesn't set them off. Like you were saying, just kind
Right.
of, um, how can you provide a good environment for them?
Yes, and also for yourself, because the last thing that you really want to do is have the moment that you're spending with them laden with the, oh man, now she's screaming and cursing. I did that. I got to get her to stop. I feel like garbage. Or I don't want to be here. I want to leave. I want to go home. I want to go bury my head in the sand. There's so many different emotions come up.
Right.
And again, back to the earlier comments that when we first opened the show is you're dealing with the whole situation of your relationship with them is changing. And you know that eventually they're not going to physically be here anymore. So the grieving process has totally begun as you're going through the motions of making sure that that transition and the last stages of their life and those moments are good ones for you to remember. And like you said, quality of life and dealing with their care and making sure that they're getting the best care possible. It can
I'm
suck all
glad
the
you
way
talked about the
around.
grieving. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just said it can suck all the way around.
Yes.
Yeah.
That should be its tagline, caregiving. It can
Yes.
suck all the way around.
Right. There you go.
But it's
Right.
also good. It's hard to explain.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
fine print, a little asterisk. Um, yeah, so grieving. So I think of it as pre-grief, that kind of just it's happening, but you're processing, but what is it, the 5 stages of grief? It almost feels like
Yeah.
it's like the stage right before it where you're not dealing with the loss yet, but you're dealing with layers of loss beforehand.
Right.
And
Right.
you're also responsible for the person. So it's just, and I describe this to you, it's like parenting in reverse where
It
they're
is.
losing abilities and you're parenting in some ways. You become the
Yep.
parent. And so anyway, I definitely felt a lot of grief in advance. And then you're also discussing, helping to alert other people in the
Right.
inner and outer circle about the condition of the person. So with that, you're dealing with their grief, and it
Right.
just feels overwhelming sometimes.
Right.
Making
Yeah,
sure
and
you're saying the right thing.
yes, absolutely. And, and Donna, and I didn't mean to sort of jump in, but I wanted to make sure that
Oh
I
no.
that I made this point. And it's not only dealing with the family, the extended family's grief, it's also sometimes dealing with maybe their denial. There were times as we were going through the motions of care for our mom that our extended family didn't agree with some of the
Hmm.
decisions we were making, but nobody stepped up to help us.
Hmm.
So here we are, the two children just literally making all the decisions always from the standpoint of this is the best care possible that I can provide for them, right? For dad at the time and
Hmm.
for mom. And, I don't care that you're feeling X, Y, and Z. And I'm not saying that in an insensitive way. It was really more from the standpoint of, well, don't complain to me. Come to me with answers, right? Don't come to me with
Right.
complaints. If you don't like what blah 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 whatever that situation is, then come to me with a solution. Then have you just complain, and now I've got to deal with complaining people and managing again all of the other things that you're dealing with. So in some cases it the extended family really provided way more pressure than
Mm.
the whole weight of what we were dealing with at the time.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I didn't have to deal with that in particular,
You're
but I'm
lucky.
sorry you had to deal with that. That's a lot because you have to make decisions based on all the information you have. You
Right.
may have more information than the other people do, and that You may also be trying to protect the privacy of the person and not reveal everything that is
Yeah.
going on. And so people don't necessarily have all the information, so they can't judge. But people can always judge, as I've found.
Yes.
But
Yeah, and look, and they're going through their 5 stages as
mhm,
well, and some people get stuck on denial, and there was a period of time when I was stuck on denial because I was very much raised in a very non-medicating family, and we didn't really talk about anything out loud because everybody was perfect and everybody was fine and nobody had anything, and that was all great and well and wonderful until the shit hit the fan and then somebody had something and then now we're dealing with that, but everybody else in the outer perimeter of the situation is like, no, 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 they're fine. No, no, they're not fine. Like, I'm
right.
here every day watching this. You're not here every day watching this. I am.
Do you have anything to suggest for people dealing with that? Because I don't know much about how to navigate that situation, but do you have any advice that people can
Yes, I
handle it?
think being upfront is the best thing that you can do. There might be some families, again, like mine, where we really didn't want to talk about anything that was, I don't want to say bad, but talk about anything that, maybe made them feel uncomfortable. So I think that if you can approach it like, hey, this is the situation we're dealing with. This is what this individual is really going through. As much as you can provide clarity, the better it is for you because then nobody's surprised. Everybody's aware. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are part of the decision making process. But again, like I said earlier, don't come to me with complaints, come to me with solutions and also
Right.
setting that line and boundary, which is kind of another area that I want to get into. Boundaries are so important, but keeping people informed, I think, is always the best decision.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with setting boundaries? Did you have any instances or issues with even setting boundaries with yourself on how much you were letting this affect and change your life and your daily practices?
I just went into it and let it affect my life. So I didn't set any boundaries at all.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes boundaries can be really good, but sometimes they can get in the way when there's a crisis. So there was a crisis, and so I feel like I just went in. Now, there were repercussions afterward, exhaustion and my job never quite was the same after that, and I paid a price for it, but at the same time I would pay that price again and again and again just to be
Right.
there for him. And um so I didn't really have to deal with boundaries with other people, except I feel like my big fight was about the care. Those frustrations tended to revolve around the medical staff. They all had great care. My dad, my mother-in-law, and my mother all have had great care, but there were some gaps. And in my dad's case, there were a lot of gaps. And that's how I was able to write 6,000 words about it. I just
Right.
was documenting everything and it just kept going on and on. I think that's where I had to draw my lines about this is not acceptable, that kind of thing.
Right.
But
Right.
with my own life, I just let it take over
Yeah.
and let it, and even moving in with my dad and not living with my husband and having him come over. The only time we saw each other was when he was doing backup. And so we would just see each other in passing.
It's a
And that was
lot.
just our life for maybe 6 months. I think it was about 6 months. And then with my mother-in-law moving in, that was an adjustment for our home. And we're grateful that she was able to move in with us and that we had the space for her. There
Right.
were
Right.
my husband's action figures up on the wall in her room. I kind of wonder what she thought about that. And I never asked her. Um, but yeah, it was definitely it was his room, very much so. But anyway, she lived in it and she did well. So
You
yeah.
mentioned and I spoke about this earlier in the intro and you mentioned it again about your narrative essay. So how did this whole journey with the two loved ones and now with your mom and getting all of those words out and on paper, how has that changed you? How Dana moves through the world now?
Well, I wrote it a really long time ago. I started in 2011 while it was happening, and then I was documenting everything, and then I finished the first draft in 2012, and then I read somewhere that literary magazines do not publish by the bedside kind of stories. I let that stop me. So I thought, well, why should I even try if they're not going to publish them? And it's not really a by the bedside story. And then I'm not just sitting there holding his hand. It's an action packed story
It
of
is.
caregiving.
Right.
It's exhausting in that there was just so much going on, and it's also people have talked about the humor in it and stuff like that that they weren't expecting. And so I went ahead and let that stop me. And then over time, I kept coming back to it. And then finally, I decided to go for it. I worked with someone who critiqued it, who was awesome. He's a writer I really respect. And I said, if you think this is worth it, I want to know if you think I should move forward. And he said, absolutely. I went ahead and submitted it for a year to literary magazines. And I got mostly just the form rejections. I did get one rejection that was like a hug. I call it a rejection hug because it's like, we found a lot to admire in your work, but we're not going to accept this particular
Right.
piece, but send
Right.
us more. So that was great. I want to write them a thank you letter for that rejection. But anyway, so I went ahead and thought, okay, I could let this stop me, or I could just put it on Substack and just get it out there.
Right.
So I did. And getting it out there has been really interesting, hearing from people I know and also strangers. It was sent out in a roundup of, you know, personal essays on the web that are recommended. So it was sent out that way in some publication called Memoirland. But otherwise, people are finding it and they're reading it and it's resonating with them about their own experience. So they're sharing, and I'm
Beautiful.
encouraging people to share their experiences. And having that connection, it's like a mini caregiving support group, and that we're all
Right.
going through something. Every situation is different, but there are some universal things related to it, and it's changed my way of living in the world. And that I don't want to hoard my writing anymore and just keep it in my computer. I want to get it out there, but also I'm not very prolific, so it takes me. This other thing I'm working on right now is not as it's not the same kind of story. It's going to be an audio story, but it's taken me. I mean, I honestly worked on it about 30 years.
Look, I firmly believe, Donna, that things happen when they're supposed to happen, right?
Yeah,
So if you're putting this out there and we're having this conversation now, and I will put links in the show notes to where people can find your narrative essay. I think that everything happens when it's supposed to happen.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's all good.
Yeah, and I'm really glad in a way that it's on Substack. I put it up there on online myself because I can see how many people are
Right.
accessing it, which I wouldn't be able to if it was in a literary magazine. It would just be a different audience. I would have been very happy with that as well, but it
Right.
wasn't the future for it. But that's where I landed with it. But it's been really good for me to get it out there and to hear other people's experiences. Someone sent me his writing about his caregiving experience, and it was really well done. And I just feel like I found a review that was amazing in the UK. It's just had its own life,
It's
and
validating. It's
yeah,
validating on so many levels. We're all connected. It's the human connection piece.
mhm,
It's the fact that it's always nice to feel seen and heard, that, somebody else might have gone through the same experience as you, and or might be going through the same experience that you are, and needs help. You said it in the beginning that you put on your little nurse's uniform and you went out and you helped. So this is just help in the written form.
and I
That's how I
promise I
see it.
won't put on a little old fashioned nurse's uniform.
Well, you
um,
could have. It would have been fun.
I
Put
just
on a little hat.
that's part of my brand. I just wear this nurse's outfit.
Oh,
Um,
man. Dana, before we go, I ask every guest the same question because I believe the stories we leave behind say so much about how we show up in the world. So tell me, what's one story, big or small, that you hope people remember you for?
so I'm trying to figure out how not to make it too long, but my when my dad had his electrical fire, was we were in a hotel trying to sort through. He had the clothes on his back, and I mean he was
Ugh.
lucky to get out of there. We were making all the calls, to to get him set up, to get him to where he moved in with us, but at that time we didn't know he was going to do that briefly. And so anyway, he was a very tall man. We needed clothes for him, and they're not easy to find, just at any store. And we're trying to figure that out. And a friend either texted or emailed me or something, a good friend, and she said, "I need to talk to you. I'm having a rough time." So I thought about it, and I was like, if I tell her what's going on right now, she's not going to talk to me. She's not going to confide in me about what's going on with her.
Mhm.
So I went ahead and didn't tell her. And I talked to her for about 30 minutes. I focused on her. And then I got back to my dad after that. And so I guess I want to be remembered in some way as someone who would show up for friends and family in that way, that totally focused on them and helping them through. But I also want to be remembered as a goofball. So like I'm a fun person to hang out with, I think. I mean, that's biased, but I've heard reports. So anyway, I would want that to be in there too. So not just that I'm this caregiver helper type, that, I might be good to take a stroll somewhere in, I don't know, I'm thinking of New York right now because I miss it, but what good shopping buddy or movie buddy or something like that. But yeah, just fun.
Well, you are genuinely open-hearted, caring individual. And I'm not just saying that in a biased way because I know you for a very long time, but also even from the conversation that we've had and understanding and knowing all that you went through. So to be selfless and allow space for your friend and allow space for your parents, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm so happy that we connected.
Me
I
too.
really am.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into this episode of Dawn of a Story. If something you heard today moved you, made you laugh, or made you think, share it with someone you love. Please like and subscribe to the show. And if you're feeling brave, I'd love to hear your story by commenting below. It helps other story lovers find us too. If you'd like to reach out to Dana and read more about her narrative essay, Dana can be found on Blue Sky and Substack. Blue Sky is at dbaredit.bsky social, and Substack is dbarnesedit.substack.com. And I will also put that in the show notes. Until next time, keep listening, keep sharing, and keep telling your story. Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.